10 random magic cards rated day number 43. I feel like I said the wrong day sometime in the recent past, but who knows? It's day number 43 to the best of my knowledge. Let's look at the first card of the day. It is Ranger Captain of EOS, everyone. 3 mana, 1 and 2 white for a 3/3 human soldier. When it ETBs, you may search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost 1 or less, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your library. Sacrifice Ranger Captain. Your opponents cannot cast non-creature spells this turn. Boy, is there a reason this is so much mana, or money. Mana is money, why not? Yeah, $26, $27, and $47 to own copies of this card. If you want the retro frame one, you'll have to pay $50 for it, and that's the way it should be, but probably not. I'd rather it be that the retro frame one was cheaper, because I really like retro frames. But, you know, they're the best looking versions of cards, so it makes sense they'd be more expensive. Either way, yeah, this is an incredible card. It's so good. I'm fairly certain that this has seen play in older formats, but just as a commander card, it's a tutor for a 1-drop, which is good enough, and also look at that sacrifice ability. It's very good. It's super blinkable too. You can blink the crap out of this guy. The absolute crap, as a matter of fact. So I'm going to give Ranger Captain a 7.71. Just a wonderful magic card to start our day. I think so. That's good. You having breakfast? You eating your cereal? Looking at Ranger Captain? That's, again, champions. That's how champions start their day. Get out there and get to go. Oh, it's Iridescent Vinelasher. I have reached a situation where I have to rate my favorite card from what is right now the newest set as I record this. I love this guy so much. Maybe some recency bias is going to play into my score, but I don't care. Iridescent Vinelasher is a single black mana for a 1/2 Lizard Assassin with Offspring 2. That means you can pay an additional 2 when you cast it. If you do, when he enters the battlefield, you get a 1/1 token copy of it. Landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, this guy deals a damage to target opponent. So it does say target opponent and not each opponent, so it's not quite as good as you want it to be in Commander, but you can Offspring it, and at that point you'll be covering 2/3 of your opponents. It's pretty good. But Offspring is just good, period. You know, this could have just been a 1 mana 1/2 that does the landfall, and that would have been fine. But the fact they give it Offspring means you kind of get to play 2 copies of a card in Commander, and that's nuts. It's so good. Offspring's so good looking in Commander. I love that about the abilities in Bloomburrow. They're standard playable, but better in Commander. Like gifting a thing is better in Commander. But Vinelasher's so good, dude. I've already said a million things about this guy on the channel, so I won't belabor it too much. I'm just goo gaga over stuff like this. I always will be. It's kind of crazy we didn't have like a cheap landfall card that already did this. We had like Spitfire Lagak, which costs 4 times as much as this. But it does hit each opponent. Dang it. You know, just for a single mana, this landfall ability is really, really nice to have, whether it's standard or Commander. So I'm going to give this card a 7.3. and leave it at that. That's probably too high, but I love it. So we'll move on to Elvish Archers. I love Elvish Archers. Just look at it. Look at what Anson Maddox did with this card. Look how much it pops. Look how much the bow pops against the yellow background, like the yellow-green, like tennis ball background. A square, the sort of jaw is. Look how the hair is blowing in the wind. Like, just beautiful, beautiful magic card. Look at the lighting on like the chest and ab muscles, you know what I mean? Like, just everything's pitch perfect, especially for like sort of the art they were doing back then in terms of like the fantasy commissions they were making. Just absolutely a cut above a lot of stuff. A lot of people love this card from back in the day, and most people that love it is because it looks the way it does. This is one of the first magic cards a lot of people fell in love with, because it looks so cool. This is 2 mana, 1 and a green for a 2/1 elves with first strike. That's it. It's a Thalia. It's a Thalia. That's it. It's a Thalia that doesn't tax your opponent, and it has a reasonably important creature type. But it's still awesome. Everyone still loves it. Everyone still loves this card. Even the revised one is like $2.39 market price. Just because, you know, it's iconic. It is purely iconic. Doesn't have the best stats in the world anymore. Who cares? It's just cool. So I'm going to give Elvish Archers a sort of painful 4.7 because it doesn't actually do much beyond have a good relevant creature type. And like First Strike is fine. First Strike is a good ability. And this card taught us that. It's taught all of us that. We'll move on to Lotus Field. Oh my God, it's Lotus Field. Lotus Field is a land with hexproof, and it ETB's tapped. When it does so, you sacrifice 2 lands, but you can tap it For 3 mana of any color, there are multiple decks built around this card right now in both Pioneer and Modern, although they experience, to say the least, varying levels of success. But I believe the Lotus Field deck in Pioneer is actually pretty good. And the card before it, what is it, Lotus Veil from Weatherlight, that this is kind of cribbing off of, also had a couple of very important decks that it was part of back in the day. Sometimes you want to sack lands. Sometimes it's totally fine to sack lands. All right. So, and this has hexproof as well, which is kind of a pretty important part of the card. So, you know, Lotus Veil did not have that. But Lotus Field is very, very cool. Honestly, already iconic, even if it was just printed in Core Set 2020. Already somewhat an iconic card in some ways. Just really awesome. John Avon knocked it out of the art. I love that it's John Avon, by the way. That is very cheeky. Just very, very cool card, man. But what do you actually give it? I will give Lotus Field a 7.49. We'll go 7.49 on Lotus Field. It does enough to have justified a high score, I think. Moving on to Sword of Light and Shadow. Man, bangers today, right? Jeez. Sword of Light and Shadow is 3 mana for an artifact. It is an equipment that equips for 2. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from both white and black. Whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you gain 3 life, and you may return up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Cast Healing Salve, cast Raise Dead. Oh, and by the way, your guy can never be removed. Like, you know, this not only puts it out of the range of red removal spells with the +2/+2 most of the time, almost no matter what you hook it up to, but obviously your dude can't be Swords to Plowshares, Get Lost, Fateful Absence, any white removal spell ever printed, Terror, Dark Banishing, Go for the Throat, any black removal spell ever printed. Most of the good removal spells are printed in white and black, so your dude is protected from most removal spells and can't be blocked by 2 different colors of creature, so just absolutely gross. Really, really tough. Really tough to keep up with this thing once it starts swinging, and that's why it costs like $10 to get the cheapest copy of this card. Still an absolutely brutal Magic card, dude. And I don't love equipment very much, but this is one of the few equipment that I really have to be like, okay, that's good. That's a good card. It just is good. So let's give Sword of Light and Shadow a 7.49 as well. I'm going all the way up there with it. The card is just absolutely nasty. Nasty Magic card. We'll move on to Repeating Barrage. 3 mana, 1 and 2 red for a sorcery. Repeating Barrage deals 3 damage to a creature or player. You can also raid for 5 mana, 3 and 2 red. Return Repeating Barrage from your graveyard to your hand. You can only do that if you attacked this turn. So it says specifically attacked with a creature, like you'd attack with anything else. I mean, but still. Yeah, this is meant to be Hammer of Bogarden. It's basically a Hammer of Bogarden. But that was not good. When Ixalan first came out, we had moved way beyond Hammer of Bogarden, but I will always love any reference to one of my favorite red cards of all time, easy. So I'm going to give Repeating Barrage. This is what happens, by the way, whenever I eat cucumbers. I get a Repeating Barrage. They repeat on me, and it certainly is a barrage. I'll give Repeating Barrage a 5.3, and you cannot stop me. A burn spell that comes back and all you have to do is swing with a creature? Yeah. It's good. You a bunch of clods? That's pretty... You're not a clod. Everybody who thinks card's bad, though. This is Hollow Trees, originally printed in Fallen Empires, and this whole cycle got a reprint in 5th edition. Hollow Trees is a land that comes into play tapped. You may choose not to untap Hollow Trees during your untap phase and instead put a storage counter on it. You can tap to remove any number of storage counters from it, and for each storage counter removed, you can add green to your mana pool. These are actually somewhat still played. This card's $1 from Fallen Empires. Most cards from Fallen Empires are not $1. But just to prove that it actually does see some play, even the 5th edition copy is 83 cents. So, you know, somebody's ordering the card. That's all I'm saying. Somebody probably just tried to boost the price of all these storage counter lands and kind of failed a little bit, you know. But all things considered, these can be good lands. We used to not like them so much back in the day, but they would still see some play in like tournament decks because, you know, if you're a slow roll deck, this can, after 3 or 4 turns, make a ton of mana for you. You want that. So these are still kind of okay, and I'm going to give them a solid 6.9. I'm going to go 6.9 on these. I think they're that good. Move on to Devastation. Good lord at the cards today, guys. Devastation is 7 mana, 5 and 2 red for a sorcery. Destroy all creatures and all lands. But note that you leave all the artifacts and enchantments intact. Same thing with Planeswalkers too, in the modern day. Battles, I guess. There's a bunch of different stuff. But yeah, Destroy All Creatures and Lands is basically a full game reset unless you've set things up just right, which is where this card comes in, man. Starter, you get this card for 17 bucks. Portal, you get this card for 18 bucks. These are both sets that are not super easy to find and didn't get printed out the wazoo or anything. So some of that price makes a little bit of sense in terms of that. But also, look what the card does. And that also helps justify this price, you know? I think that this is close to like Yockle Hops or Apocalypse or something like that in terms of like actually resetting the entire game. And so, yeah, it definitely deserves some love. Still legal in Commander, too. Cost a lot of mana to play, but boy, will it make everybody mad. And all you have to do is have a couple of enchantments out that get you some amount of like turn-by-turn value. Profit, you know? So I'll give Devastation a 7. Just right at a 7, man. It costs a lot of mana, and you got to set it up. But jeez Louise, does it restart a game. We'll move on to Hammer of Nazahn here. This is, wow, a good-looking version. Yeah, 4 mana for a legendary equipment that equips for 4. When Hammer or another equipment enters the battlefield under your control, you may attach it to a creature you control. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has indestructible. This is actually awesome. Yeah, it's like 10 bucks to buy this card. You can see why. It's been reprinted a fair number of times, too. But it's still expensive. It probably goes in every single equipment deck there is. And honestly, it could go in a bunch of decks that aren't even equipment decks, because it just grants indestructible, which is nuts. It's so good. Even if you don't have another equipment in your entire deck, it just automatically attaches itself, grants indestructible, and that little +2/+0 is worth something too. So I have never seen this card in my life. Really surprisingly, I've never seen this card. This is actually pretty good, guys. This is actually all right. I'm going to give this a 6.8, which is high. This might be the highest average score for any video we've done in the history of the series so far. So that's neat. We'll move on to Warp Devotion, final card of the day. 3 mana. Let's go with the Plane Shift one. 3 mana, 2 and a black for an enchantment. Whenever a permanent is returned to a player's hand, that player discards a card from his or her hand. That's neat. I remember this. I just don't remember liking it very much. But now you look at it in the context of all the unsummons that have ever been printed, right? And even all of the cards people play in Commander that like bounce stuff to their own hand and this punishes them. That's kind of neat. So you'd need just the right thing in order to make this like actually playable in your Commander deck. But given the chance to do so, then yeah, I think it's actually pretty sweet. Turns all your bounce spells into, you know, we usually call bounce spells 0-for-1s, you know, but it actually turns your bounce spells into 1-for-1s. And that's pretty good, really. Note that like with Cyclonic Rift, they'll always have to return or to discard at least one card. It's always just one card, but I don't know. I just think this is kind of cool and maybe needs a little bit of attention paid to it. I'm going to give this card a 4.8. Even though it is very unique. You just don't see a whole lot of stuff like this. So I like it a lot. Man, what a day. Jeez, what a day, guys. Rate these cards down there. Usually I'd give you 1 card to rate. But just, man, tell me what you'd rate all these cards, because I don't think there was a truly terrible one in the bunch, save for maybe 1 or 2. Just really, really good day, everybody. Hope that tomorrow's just as good, and I'll see you then. Bye.